oh, my nipples are smoking. Welcome to Hey You Guys Podcast. I'm Rob, this is Liam, and this week we watched Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight. Now, there are some movies that stick with us through our youth, only to be revisited time and time again at different stages of our lives. Some of them remain as captivating as ever, as we've already discussed. Some of them you go, what the hell was I thinking? I mean, we've got a couple of them ones as well.
Yeah.
Tales from the Crypt is a border film for me. Mm-hmm. It's still captivating in places, but then when you look at it, you think, what was I thinking as a kid? Like, literally. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Streets of Fire is a big one. Loved it as a kid. Mm-hmm. Now it's like, what was I thinking? But, I mean, Tales from the Crypt, starring Billy Zane. And that was a question I actually wrote down for you. And I'm going straight into this podcast. Mm-hmm. Is there many Billy Zane starring films? Like, Billy Zane is a name for us from the 80s, isn't it? He is
I've had this conversation so many times with my friends. Every time I bring up this film, nobody knows what it is. Nobody, yeah. And I'm like, oh, Billy Zane's in it. Everyone's like, oh, Billy. Everyone knows Billy Zane. But I asked my friends, like, what's Billy Zane in? And everyone's just like, what's he famous for? He hasn't got that kind of marquee role. The closest thing he's got is Titanic, where that sounds weird because he's arguably the third lead in what was at the time the biggest movie of all time. Yeah. But nobody remembers that he was in it hardly. And then outside of that, the fucking Phantom? Nobody remembers that. Literally, I think most people remember him playing himself in Zoolander.
Either that or, most people are going to remember it from that. Then you've got the people like us who know him from like Back to the Future when he played Match.
Yeah, but that's like a tiny role.
No, and that's what I mean. But
that doesn't match up with how like oddly famous he is.
No, it's random. And I think, right, he's got that early sort of fame that Danny Trejo now has. Whereas you were just in these films and you've made a name for yourself by being in these films. But as you said, aside from The Phantom, I think Sniper is another one. There's not many starring Billy Zane roles that you can pull from the top of your head and go.
I always think of like the Pointless thing. Like if Billy Zane came up on like Pointless and they said, name 3 Billy Zane movies, loads of people would struggle. The interesting thing, I think most people would know who he is, but loads of people would struggle to name 3 Billy Zane films. And it's strange because you can see why he's memorable, though, because he's fucking brilliant in this.
He's great.
Shit insane. And the other thing as well is you forget just how goddamn handsome he was in the 90s. Like, he is an objectively beautiful man, like with the eyes and everything. But also, as beautiful as a man as he might be on an objective level, you can also see why, like, on the surface, the obvious thing would be you make Billy Zane the good guy, and you make the, let's be clear, rather odd-looking Sadler the bad guy.
There's another one. How is William Sadler the hero?
That is bizarre. However, there is something just inherently evil about Billy Zane's face. Yeah. As handsome as he is, you're like, as soon as they kind of play him off as, oh, he's a demon, you're like, yeah, I get it. He's absolutely a mega handsome demon. He's just got that look about him.
The one thing I got from Billy Zane in this film as well that I've always known, but it was bigger in this one, is that dude's got such a great voice. That's making some people wet. I'm sorry. His voice.
He's got a voice for radio, but luckily he also has a face for the screen. So he's got everything basically. But it's interesting what you said at the start, though, because you obviously have this long relationship with this film where you watched it as a kid, and now you're coming back to it, years later. Whereas I remember the poster, but I knew nothing about this film, which
is absolutely batshit to me. Again, you've said this numerous times before about remembering the poster, but not. It's absolutely batshit that you haven't seen. I would have put this up your alley. As a kid.
That is the thing. It absolutely is. It's so bizarre that I've not seen it because I love EC Comics. Tales of the Crypt is an EC comic. I love those kind of 50s style Americana horror comics. I love Tales from the Crypt, which is very much from the same wheelhouse. I love Stephen King. This could totally be a Stephen King short story. 100%.
Yeah.
And I love the tone of this kind of horror. It's not horror so much as I think of it as Halloween tone. It's incredibly self-aware. It could, this film could just as easily be like a PG if you just cut out, the tits and all the violence. In terms of, this is almost like in the same category as like Simpsons Halloween Treehouse of Horrors.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of fits into that character category. Only everything's being turned up. So yeah, totally. I love everything about this film. I love that kind of comedy horror. It's ticking all the boxes. Why have I never seen this before? I don't know. But the fact is, coming to it now, I was a little bit concerned. I was like, oh, it's a kind of, whatever horror from like 1995. I was like, am I going to be a big fan? The answer is, I'm a massive fan of this film. I fucking love this film. And it's one of those movies where I knew I loved it within the opening, I'd say 30 seconds. As soon as they did the shot going through the house, I'm like, oh yeah, this is my kind of movie.
Before you even get to the actual Demon Knight story.
We even got to the Demon Knight story, I was totally on board. And bizarrely, because I literally knew nothing about it, this film delivered two legitimately major sucker punches to me. The first one was that once you go through the house and then you get the body, which looks like it comes out of the goo, and the woman with the tits, and she's in the bath and all that jazz, I thought that was the film. And then it cuts to the Crypt Keeper, like that super meta scene where he's directing that movie. I was like, oh, that's not the movie. That's cool. Then it cuts to Demon Knight, and I think it's going to be this relatively kind of, it's suddenly a very cinematic looking film. And they play it relatively straight for like 15, 20 minutes. And I had settled into this almost, again, to bring it back to Stephen King, Billy Zane, almost like the Man in Black.
Yeah. Yeah.
He has that kind of vibe.
He's got Walter vibes, definitely.
100%.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, he punches the fucking police officer through his face. Yeah. Wait, what the fuck? And from that point on, it goes in a completely different direction. And I was not expecting it. It feels like I watched 3 movies and I fucking loved them all. I loved them all.
So, to me, right, 2 things I wanted to mention from what you were saying then. Mm-hmm. The first one was, you said it could be PG if they take out the tits. Please don't take out the tits.
No, you've got, like, that is a big part of this film. I guess my point being is that, that there could never be a PG version of Hereditary or The Exorcist. That's like classic horror.
No, I was just joking.
I know. I'm just kind of like, there's something about the tone of this movie which I just adore, as I said.
The second thing I wanted to say as well, you said as well, there was like 3 openings or 3. Mm-hmm. The actual opening of the Demon Knight story, I think, is such a fantastic opening. I've always loved that opening. You've got the 2 cars just driving. They're in the weirdest car chase ever because it doesn't feel like they're going fast, but to an absolute banger of a song.
Dude, the music in this film is amazing.
Filters, "Hey Man, nice shot." Now, the reason I wanted to bring this up is because that song was written about a US treasurer that shot himself live on TV in 1987.
Very charming. Yeah. Very charming indeed.
"Hey Man, nice shot," like he didn't miss. But when you're hearing that song playing and you've got the fog going on, you just got the headlights, you've got Breaker, again, William Sadler, random choice for a hero, and I'm not going to say he did great, but he did.
I liked him. It is a strange choice, but the problem is if you choose Billy Zane as the bad guy, you can't go handsome again.
No, you can't.
You've got to have something playing against that. And William Sadler, he's one of these guys, like he's very much a character actor. He's not handsome, but he is. What I always say is he's interesting to look at.
Yeah, absolutely, and he did great. And then you've got like what do they call him in this? The Collector. Billy Zane is the Collector. Just, there's nothing on his face. He doesn't care. He'll go to the ends of the earth as long as it takes, and there's absolutely no problem. But then I love it because he gives you that air of, I'm just going to keep doing my job and I'll keep going on forever. And then all of a sudden it changes in him. When you said, when he goes, oh, fuck this, punches the copper through the skull, he then gets chucked out the window, and that turn of phrase he does is wicked. I'm not going to do the Billy Zane voice, but he goes, "Humans, you're not worth the flesh you're printed on. Fuck this cowboy shit. You fucking hold down, podunk. Well, them there, motherfuckers."
I just love the fact that, like, and again, I didn't know this was coming. That to that point, he's like playing a part. He's pretending to be a human. He's almost like, if I can do this under wraps, then that's what I'm going to do. If I can do this relatively low key, I'm going to. But the moment his cover is blown and he loses his temper, he just goes, "Fuck this! I'm just going all out." And that's what he does for the rest of the film. But the one thing I will say about this film is that I'm still amazed that it's not an actual anthology, because, Tales from the Crypt feels like an anthology show. The EC comics are very much in that style. the whole story feels like a Stephen King short, for lack of a better term. And the setup is so much like, like Elvira's movie Macabre, or I know it's sci-fi rather than horror, but Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Yeah, that's what I wrote in my notes. Yeah.
Absolutely has that vibe. And I'm just like, I'm almost a little bit sad that, as great as the movie was, that it wasn't 30 minutes long and we got two other, like literally Treehouse of Horror, but a super violent version where you get this just condensed in 30 minutes and then I get two more stories afterwards. Like and we'll get to it in Legacy. I know there were supposed to be 3 movies. I would have loved it if they just had all 3, just kind of zip those down into short stories and have them all as one movie, basically.
You know what? I think this is where we're going to disagree, because I do love those stories. Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, the Creep Show movies. You got, what's it, VHS now, the ABCs of horror, all things like that. You get a lot of these anthology ones. What I love is, even though this had the pre and post before the film, you then get the film, so it's not an anthology, and I think that's different, and that's what Tales from the Crypt does. It's very different. I remember the cartoon, I remember the TV show. It was never short stories. It was always, we got 20 minutes to tell this one story, we're going to tell it. So what I was gutted for, you just said it about Legacy as well, was the fact that this was building up a trilogy of the Collector and the Key and things like that. So I was
they were going to be like loosely connected by the Key, weren't they? But there was ostensibly going to be 3 different horror stories, loosely linked by one artifact. And like you said, it is a shame, because I adore the tone, I adore the setup. I love the stop motion Crypt Keeper nonsense at the start. I'm a massive fan of all that.
He looked great, didn't he? When he's walking, to John Larroquette randomly, who played the body. When the Crypt Keeper's walking to him, telling him off, he still looked great. He only looked a bit rough when you had the animation head on top of the body that was shouting at him at that time when it stopped.
Yeah. But even then, it still looked kind of charming. Like, it's that kind of horror where you can absolutely get away with that. Like, that kind of horror always has an element of DIY. Again, like, that opening shot, what it reminds me of is like stuff like the Addams Family or the Munsters, but again, with tits and more violence. And a big part of the charm of those shows is that they do feel like sets, that it does feel kind of chintzy. And, I don't think there's any genre of film which gets away with it more than horror itself. Like, a lot of the biggest horrors of all time are low budget. Even like the quote unquote kind of higher class horror films, again, I mentioned earlier, your Hereditaries, your Babadooks and stuff like that. None of them are big, but like big budget horror rarely works. But as I said, even when you move to the comedy side, I feel like you can really get away with a lot, and you can kind of lean on charm and tropes and cliches, and it works in a way that doesn't work in other genres. And as I said, I loved so much of it. I was just won over in, like I said, the first 30 seconds. And the way that I wasn't with, say, again, I'm not picking on this film because it was a female cast. They weren't the issue. But Ghostbusters 2016, when I went to see that in the cinema, I was the complete opposite. Because I remember the opening sequence, I was like, they've just got the tone wrong. The tone just felt all wrong. And it was, like I said, you can say whatever you want about the actors, actresses and stuff. I was just like, they haven't got the tone right. Whereas with this, because it just felt bang on what I'm looking for in a horror comedy, I was on board and off to the races. And as I said, I enjoyed the entire movie, and the surprises that certainly came along the way.
I kind of feel that, they concentrated on the horror first and the comedy followed. And that's what I like about it. You had those comedy elements, but it wasn't all slapstick. I mean, a lot of the comedy was brought by Thomas Hayden Church playing Roach. Like, some of his lines are fantastic. The "my nipples are smoking" line, the screw the end of the world thing, I have hemorrhoids.
We've mentioned it with other horror films which we've covered on this podcast. But one of the most underrated elements of any horror is establishing a memorable cast to then kill off. Like, the best horror films always have, you don't just remember the kill, you remember the characters got killed. And you see it in so many horror films. You see these people die, and they might die in elaborate, interesting ways. Be like, I just don't care. I can hardly remember who that is. Whereas with this film, there is an interesting cast of characters, luckily played by a genuinely fantastic cast of actors and actresses. And when they die, it makes it all the better, because a lot of the deaths actually are pretty geared towards the end of the film. Like, I think because the cast is so good, they keep them around for a long time. So when they die, suddenly I'm just like, oh, this matters.
After Wally pretty much gets taken out by Cecilia. That was her name, wasn't it?
Wow.
Cordelia.
When the Cordelia sequence, the possession sequence, was legit bad. Like every time I thought, oh, I think I know what this film is now, it suddenly got to the Cordelia sequence. I was like, this feels like top tier 80s practical effects horror. It reminded me of The Thing.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden, like obviously it has its goofier moments, but when this film goes for it with the practical effects, it is gross. Like in the best possible way.
Oh, it looks fantastic, like because you had the whole eye popping thing and stuff like that, and practical effects and practical makeup. Dick Miller as Uncle Willie, when he was scary Uncle Willie,
great.
That was fantastic. I wanted to ask about,
and it's just good to see him in movies. He's just, like, I know this is a 90s movie, but for some odd reason, seeing him in a film just feels like a warm hug. I don't know why, but it just does.
You see him and you think something's going to happen to this dude, but I'm on board for it.
Yeah.
Did you think? I mean, I'm not trying to sound sexist or anything like that as well, but of all the collector trying to get you to say yes stuff, I'm pretty sure Uncle Willie's dream.
It's the best.
You're not going to say no, are you?
I just love, like, each character has their own weakness, but Uncle Willie, he just loves booze and tits. That's it. He's a simple man with simple wants. Everything else is kind of like tied into their childhood or, you know, some kind of existential angst. With Uncle Willie, boy loves tits and booze, and that's what we're going with.
How many times as well do you think Billy Zane or Dick Miller fucked up their lines just to get another take? I'm pretty sure that film, that take went about 60 times or something like that. You go, oh, sorry, I flubbed my line. Can we do it again?
But as ridiculous as it is, does this film need all these boobs? It doesn't feel out of place in this film. No. It doesn't feel forced. It's just like, yeah, that belongs here. That absolutely belongs here. Just like a strip club scene belongs in every 80s action movie. The boobs in this film don't feel egregious. They are egregious, but they don't feel egregious.
It was clever, though. Not the boobs. That wasn't clever. That was what was. But the collector trying to get into your mind. Cordelia, all she wanted was love. The way he would talk to her, the soft-spokenness of Billy Zane as he's talking to her. That was very good. Then when he's talking to fucking Jerry Lynn, what a name. When he's talking to Jerry Lynn and he knows she hasn't gone out of this town, so he's offering her the world, which is, and then what does Uncle Willie want? Uncle Willie wants tits and booze.
I have to mention, though, Jada Pinkett Smith scene, the one thing I remember from that is perhaps the most disgusting movie gob I have ever seen. When she spits on his face, I was like, what was in her mouth?
But she does it twice, because she does that and then she gobs up the blood at the end. So she loves spitting.
Well, she gobs up the blood, but I'm always like, yeah, the blood thing I can, like, you know, they really kind of telegraph that. She's clearly got blood in her mouth. We get it. But when she spits in his face and it's just supposedly just spit, I was like, oh my, it's like all over his face.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my. I was like, I hope that wasn't her actually spitting in his face and that was the result. Because if someone spat in my face and it looked like that, I wouldn't even be upset. I'd just tell them to go to the doctor. Like, God damn, Jada Pinkett Smith.
Before they yelled action, you know, she just went, oh. Just pulled up that, right from the...
Really from the depths.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Oh, sorry, Karen.
I just want to mention Cordelia. Do you know who she is?
I know the name of the actress. I'm saying that, and it's Brenda
Bake, something like that. I didn't really... so she's been in loads. She's been in, like... Under Siege 2, LA Confidential. But the thing when I saw her, when I went, oh, what's she from? I went, no fucking way. She, before this film, she was in Hot Shots Part 2 as the literal mole.
I've seen Hot Shots Part 2, but I don't have the same attachment to it. I was always the Hot Shots Part 1 guy. I don't know why Hot Shots Part 2 didn't work for me. Like, because it should have, because it's kind of sent up all the movies I love from the 80s. Yeah. And I wasn't a massive Top Gun guy when I was younger. So I don't know why I found the first one so funny and the second one didn't really land. But yeah, that's for another podcast, obviously.
Yeah, next week's Hot Shots podcast.
Of course.
But no, I was just shocked because it's one of those.
I looked up. Oh, sorry. I was just saying, like, I looked up our IMDb and I was like, I can't remember in any of those films. I'm sure if I saw it, it'd make sense, but it just wasn't ringing a bell.
That's what I was saying. It's one of those things that I've said before. You see a character, you go to look at previous works, and you go, fuck me, you were in that. Fuck me, you were in that. You were in that. You were in that. Yeah, I mean, I don't remember you in any of these films, but you were in them.
Yeah, she does pop up. One of the few, like, as much as I love this film, I do have a couple of issues with it. One of them is that as great as this movie looks, the laser eye thing I just thought looked properly naff. I just didn't think that worked.
After they get shot in the eyes.
Yeah, and it kind of like zaps out and stuff. And the whole concept of having to shoot them in the eyes in the first place, it kind of doesn't really go anywhere. And I don't know. They were just maybe doing something different from, the classic destroy the head and whatever kind of thing.
Yeah, but that was a bit, what's the word? Not lackadaisical. The rules on that were different to suit the time as well. Because either the lasers
would... It was just inconsistent.
Either the lasers would shoot half a mile across the room, or they would just fizz out and fall to the ground, or they would destroy an entire mine shaft.
Yeah, and I just thought like the little kind of like everyday demon guys didn't really land. They kind of looked okay, but I don't know, they just didn't have much of an impact for me. And I'm not sure if I found it charming or not, but like the stuff in the past, the stuff with the crucifix, with Jesus, and then the stuff in World War One, it's very Army of Darkness, kind of, it's so clearly a set.
But I'm all right with that.
Yeah, it just, I don't know, it just took me out of the film a little bit. When it was all like set in the hotel, I was like on board with the visuals. But when it went there, it just bizarrely took me out of the film. And I don't know, it feels like one of those things because I'm a fan of Army of Darkness. And I've already mentioned the fact that, these films can get away with looking a bit chintzy. But there was just something about those sequences which just felt ill-suited to this film. Yeah. And I get what they were trying to do, but it just took me out of the film briefly, which was a minor shame to say.
Do you know what shocked me as well? Again, playing with the rules and stuff, they highlighted that they were going into a church when they the motel, hotel, halfway house, whatever the fuck that thing was. They never actually explained. They said that it was a church. So in my mind, well, he can't go into a church. But no, straight away,
that doesn't seem to be an issue unless
but that's what I liked, the fact that any other rules, it would be he can't go onto consecrated ground.
Yeah.
But in this one, he can go wherever he wants, as long as the blood of Jesus or the blood of a Frenchman isn't coating the door.
Well, yeah, I think it is the blood of Jesus that is being passed on, partially diluted, I assume, but still the blood of Christ. I just don't get the whole, like, if you put it on a door, it kind of protects the whole door frame. Again, the rules of this world aren't particularly well explained, but I also don't really give a shit. It's absolutely fine because every time I almost think about something utterly bonkers happens. And in a movie where you get some genuinely gruesome deaths, and again, you get, some of them turn into demons, some of them turn into, the only thing I compare it to again is The Thing in terms of genuinely grotesque monsters. I don't know why that was happening. But amidst all this madness, the thing that really upset me was the sponge in Billy Zane's mouth.
Yes.
I don't know why that was so goddamn weird and gross.
It was the look he gave while he's doing it. Because he opens his mouth, it flips out like a green tongue, and then he's emoting with his eyes, and he's just doing his eyebrows. Yeah, it was very strange.
I didn't care for it.
Can I go back just quickly? Because you've said now that like when they get turned, it reminds you of The Thing. Do you know what it reminds me of more? Especially when you saw Danny, the little boy who was turned into a demon.
Oh, yeah.
Dan Aykroyd in Ghostbusters 2, when Vigo the Impaler, or whatever his name is, actually goes into Dan Aykroyd.
Oh, yeah. I know what you mean, yeah. Well, there's something about like the way the faces change so dramatically. Like, I was surprised that they went quite as grotesque as they did, and there was clearly a bit of a budget behind this. And I was glad to hear that, this film actually did quite well at the box office. Like, there was a reason that they made a follow-up to this film, and they were going to do a trilogy. It was actually the follow-up, which wasn't the film that's referenced at the end credits, which, again, we'll get to in Legacy, but a completely different film, which had a much smaller budget, bombed, and then the whole project was just abandoned. You're like, man, there's definitely a kind of what if, but then I'm part of the problem, because I didn't go and see this when I was younger.
And you should have, because it's right up your alley. You mentioned the rules, Ryan. You mentioned you were okay with the rules. I wanted to ask a question.
Okay is maybe the wrong thing, because I don't think they make much sense. I just didn't care because I was enjoying myself.
All right. Well, I wanted to ask a question on the rules, especially the question about there being 7. Okay.
Oh, yeah. All that stuff's so underplayed.
But where does the 7 come from? Because if you're not including Breaker, which I don't think you will be, you've got Geraldine, Cordelia, Irene, Uncle Willie, Roach, Wally, the sheriff, and then Bob. That's 8 for a start. Breaker is 9. But he said it's okay because it's 7 of you.
Yeah, like he was all fated to be and all that jazz. Yeah.
Is that after the case? I mean, does the rule start after Sheriff Tupper gets his head smashed in? Because then there's only 7 of them, not including Breaker. But then Danny comes in, so that makes 8 again.
Yeah, that whole rule felt so poorly thought out and incredibly poorly implemented, because I was like, I'm sure there were more than 7. And it comes in so late in the film. You're like, I think they should have just abandoned that or commit to do it properly. Because, what they could have done is just, really, I think if you establish that earlier in the film, I think it works, and it adds to the whole, because when this film's at its best, what it really feels like is Assault on Precinct 13. I love those kind of films where basically people are stuck in a location and they're being attacked by an external force. Obviously this is like goofy Billy Zane rather than like a gang or something, but I love that setup. And this film does that brilliantly. But the rules around that are hazy at best and absolute bullshit at worst. And sadly, I think it's actually the latter most of the time.
Yeah.
But again, it kind of gets away with it because it's such a charming film.
Yeah.
Even if it does have its issues. And make no mistake, this film does jump the shark a bit at the end. Like, I wasn't on board with Billy Zane's dick fire. I just wasn't. I gotta be honest with you. I just wasn't. I was like, because Beth had said she heard me laughing a few times from the other room, but she did hear me groan once. And the groaning was directly linked to the dick fire. I was like, I wish they hadn't done that. I'm not sure about the dick fire at all.
I mean, because that's being added post. So they're like, do me a favor, just I don't know, wiggle your hips a little bit, like you've just released your monster. Like, what is going on?
It's such a shame because I was such a big fan of the super meta comic book sequence just before that, which you kind of get in like as a direct comparison. Crypt show did it a bit with the anthology series where it starts as a cartoon and then becomes the actual TV show or the anthology collection of movies. With this, it's strange because you're not expecting it to suddenly come in so late in the film where, is it Danny the kid?
Danny's the kid, yeah.
Yeah, he's reading the comic and then the comic becomes what's actually happening there and then. I was just like, I was a massive fan of that. But then, like I said, you get dick fire. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't upset for long because Billy Zane's death is absolutely amazing.
I wanted her to kiss him. So to pass it in so he melts from the inside instead of just spitting her in his face again.
I thought they were going to I was amazed she didn't kiss him. I thought that would have been much more effective. And then, like you said, it comes from the inside and stuff. Yeah. But his death scene, man.
Oh, no, his death is great.
It is amazing. It's just, I had the exact same issue. I just thought it was a shame that she just spat on him. She's already spat on him, and she really, as we already made clear, she really fucking spat on him.
It's like Billy Zane really upset her during filming because all she wanted to do was spit in this dude's face. Like, I'm pretty sure after her, she called him Cracker. Like, it was,
yeah, maybe.
When did she lose her trousers?
She took off her trousers because she wanted to cover herself in blood.
So she covered herself in blood. Okay, I didn't see her get naked.
Yeah, because at first I was just like, why did you take her pants off? Yeah. I was like, I know it's that, we've already mentioned, you get the boobs and stuff in this film. I was like, that's taking it a step too far. Why is she taking, like I know, like famously Alien, the end of that is seen as a stretch where suddenly you have Sigourney Weaver running around in the tiniest of tiny underwear. And believe me, go back and watch the end of Alien. Those underwear are 3 sizes too small. It's ludicrous. Yeah. So it's like, are they playing one of those cards? Like, oh, no, it's because she's kind of rubbed the blood on herself. But again, because the rules aren't made that clear, when she comes out in that kind of, Predator style covered in blood instead of mud, obviously. At first I was like, wait a minute. What the fuck's happening here? Why? How is she covered in blood? And also, wouldn't she have wasted every drop from that bottle? I'm not even sure if they'd be enough to cover it to that extent, but I don't know. She did what she did, and like at least the payoff with Billy Zane's death was pretty fucking awesome.
That's two things. Two things I want to bring up again. The first one being, you're right about the blood in the bottle thing, because after she refilled it, right at the end, she puts the blood, which rightly so because they have a collector. But she puts the blood on the doorway of the bus as she's leaving. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've always wondered, is she going to do that for everything she goes in and out of? Because she'll run out of blood pretty quickly.
Yeah, just every goddamn door. And was that dude like who was going to get on the bus? I assume that's just Billy Zane's character in another form.
No, so that's another collector. The demons, so it's not Billy Zane. It's just
another
because
collector.
They're the demons, yeah. So they've sent somebody else out to get him. The other thing I wanted to mention as well, the best laugh out loud scene that I had was when they're talking before everything kicks off, and they're talking to Breaker at the table. And Irene goes, God damn it, get that pussy off the table. And Cordelia jumps up and she goes, I was talking to the cat.
Yeah, that was quite good. But speaking of her, I will say that some of the deaths in this film are fantastic.
Yeah.
But when the two of them die at the end, where she straps... and they strap themselves with bombs. Obviously, they're trying to go for a Vasquez and Gorman style death from Aliens.
Yeah.
Only the difference is here, it was completely unnecessary. It drove me. I was just like, you could have just thrown the grenades downstairs and gone up the steps.
Yeah.
You didn't need one of you didn't need to stay behind. Two of you, why the fuck were you both there? It made no sense. Again, they were trying to build this kind of dramatic, finale for these characters going out like heroes, but on a technical level, I just looked at it, I was like, that wasn't needed at all. Your sacrifice was really unnecessary in this instance. I'm sure they would have died regardless, but I thought they could have done a much better job with that, because I was just like, you could just throw the grenades downstairs, just go up the stairs with everyone else. And like, if one of you is being dumb enough to think, I've got to have this strapped to me, fair enough. Why you have to go with her as well is completely fucking beyond me. Very strange.
120 odd episodes in, right? And you finally joined my
team. Yeah, I was aware
dude.
Halfway through that rant. It's like, I sound like Rob. This is what happened. I spend too much time fucking talking to you now, so I start I'll be complaining about sandwiches in movies soon. Don't.
I'm all right with sandwiches in movies, but come on, that was just too quick.
Yeah, he's referring to Point Break, in case you're like, what the fuck's happening?
I mean, if people don't know, I'm referring to Point Break and the fucking sandwich issue at this point. It's Sandwich Gate. Meatball Gate, I'm going to call it.
You're still the only person I know who has an issue with that, but it's fine.
The other thing, like, CCH Pounder was great in this as the old big...
the kind of like hotel owner
curmudgeon,
kind of thing.
The old curmudgeonly woman. But it was when Billy Zane comes up, again, just having a time of his life, with her arm on a platter. And he says, do you want it? I'll give it to you. And she raises her stump. Is that a yes? No, I'm flipping you the finger. I'll get back to you. And he just leaves.
Dude, he's so good in this. Like, that really was the standout for me. Like, the first thing that surprises you is just how good the cast is for this film. Yeah. As you said, like Billy Zane, William Sadler, Jada Pinkett Smith, Brenda Bach, CCH Pounder, Dick Miller, Thomas Hayden Church. It's an awesome cast for a really done film, and everyone in this film is going for it, but nobody is going for it like Billy Zane. And that does bring us full circle back to the why wasn't Billy Zane a bigger star? And I think it is just one of those, like, he had his shot, like, The Phantom as a leading man, it didn't work out. And sometimes in Hollywood, all you get is one or two shots, and then suddenly you push down the queue and that's the end of it. But I don't think anyone has that bizarre kind of, in terms of like fame to role, I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it, but everyone knows who Billy Zane is, but nobody knows what he does exactly. It's really, really bizarre, but he is nonetheless absolutely brilliant in this. And, you can't fault him for, his efforts, because he is, in a movie which is fundamentally bonkers, he is still swinging for the fences.
Yeah.
From the moment he puts his hand through the guy's face, he's just like, well, I'm just going to go insane now, basically.
I think that's because he knows what kind of film he's doing. Mm-hmm. He knows exactly what performance is needed for this, and he just, as you say, he swings it out. He knocks out.
It is a big performance. But like I said, that's not to criticize anyone. Like, you can't, again, like the whole, you have William Sadler because Billy Zane's so handsome. You can't have handsome in the two roles. In the two leading roles, I don't think it works. And William Sadler obviously pays it right back, because you can only have Billy Zane going this big with his performance. Otherwise, it would just be too much. The only one who comes close is maybe Thomas Hayden Church as Roach, who's, going for it, make no mistake, but not at that level. But yeah, everybody has their moments in this film. And again, one of the reasons it works is that not just because, again, they're great actors and actresses, they're all written well in that specific kind of way for this kind of movie. But everyone has their moments, everyone has their time to shine. And then when everyone dies, you're like, this film just works, man.
I know he got torn apart, but do you think Roach's death was a bit lackluster? Like, he was such a scumbag. He needed to be, I don't know, to have a better death than just basically you see the top of his head as they pull him down
But that speaks to my points earlier about the fact that one of the lamest things in this film are the actual demons. They just don't really do much. They're just basically cannon fodder. They're just there to be shot. Yeah. And I know what you mean, like, because he's such a douchebag. And you think back to, say, what was the film we did a few weeks ago? Deep Rising?
Yeah.
They saved the best deaths for the biggest douchebags.
Yeah.
Like, the biggest douchebags got genuinely amazing deaths. And in this film, I was just like, oh man, they are really setting up Roach because he's such a tool. And I was like, oh, when he dies, it's going to be amazing. And then he just kind of dies. And it is without question the most disappointing death, even more so than the two idiots who blow themselves up. At least the ones who blow themselves up have the one great line, supper time. So again, I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I quite enjoyed it all the same.
Bob has a great line as well when he finds him doing the electric play upstairs. And he comes down to the sheriff and he goes, you should have seen what I saw. Have you ever seen picture, was it changing a battery and doing a lube job at the same time?
Yeah. This film's got loads of great, if somewhat silly lines. And it goes right the way through the credits. Like, you never used to get these end credit sequences. Like, everyone just thinks of Marvel now in terms of like the end credit stuff. And obviously, we always mentioned before, the first film I remember really doing it, bizarrely, was the first film I ever saw at the cinema, and it was Masters of the Universe. When Skeletor came back up under Goose,
I'll be back.
Yeah, I'll get you next time, He-Man, whatever. This film is fantastic because you get the Crypt Keeper coming back, and you get him basically telling you, "Oh, we'll be coming back next year with I think it was called Dead Easy, wasn't it?" Yeah, the film they were going to make next. I was like, God, the way they start it, the way they cap it, I just love the structure of this film. I love the fact that they run with the tone right through to the end credits, and the credits themselves are really good as well. Like, the song at the end is fucking fantastic. So from literally beginning to the very, very, very end, I'm totally on board. To the point where I know this is a film from 1995 and I didn't watch it back in the day. I'm genuinely disappointed that Dead Easy doesn't exist. Super disappointed.
Oh, yeah, because the sequel that you eventually had, which was like either straight to DVD or straight to TV, which we'll get to in Legacy, but Bordello of Blood, oh my God. Which was actually the next year. That was 96.
Yeah, it came the year after. Yeah. So it's quite strange that they actively kind of promote the sequel at the end of this film. And then this film did quite well. And then they went to Bordello of Blood rather than Dead Easy, which is bizarre. I just don't get it at all, but never mind. Are we ready to move on to favourite scene?
Yeah, we can move on.
Cool. I'll go first.
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, I love the intro. Like I said, the fact that it legitimately caught me off guard as well, because I thought, it seems ridiculous now, but I genuinely thought that was the movie. I love the fact that I was surprised again with the punch in the face, or the punch through the face, as it were. But my favorite scene probably is the Cordelia possession sequence. It is this film like firing on all cylinders. It has a bit of comedy. It goes right to the edge in terms of gross out horror. And as I said, even after he punches a dude through his face, that sequence to me still came as a surprise, like how far they pushed it. So yeah, I'm going to go with the Cordelia possession sequence.
No, I'll agree with you that there's quite a few scenes to pick from.
Oh, totally.
I've got to go with the opening, the actual Demon Knight opening.
Yeah, that's great.
The two cars driving, the music, everything. That is my absolute favorite scene of this film. It sets you up, but it's setting you up for something completely different to yet.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
like you said, it totally worked on me. Like, I know what you mean. That scene isn't in of itself a fantastic sequence, but by the time I finished the film, that felt like from a completely different movie in the best possible way.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Loves number one, the tone. Mentioned it a bunch of times, but I love the tone of this film. Even though the tone shifts numerous times, I loved every tonal shift all the way through. The cast, even including Jada Pinkett Smith, it's easy to forget now because she's become, I guess, more of a celebrity than a movie star in many respects because of all the stuff with Will Smith. It's hard to remove her from the celebrity kind of icon she's becoming in her own way, I suppose. But it's easy to forget that there was a reason she was a pretty big movie star for a while. She is charismatic and she is very good in this. But then everybody's good in this. And number 3, the willingness to turn things up to 11. It just, like I said, I wasn't expecting them to go that far, and I'm very glad they did. And I am going to say number 4, the ability to surprise. I can't remember the last time a movie pulled one over on me twice. Sneaky bastards.
So I had that for number 1, my loves, which was all the 180s they take.
Yeah.
Like I say, there was 2 or 3, but it just went. You think it's going this way, then it goes that way, then it goes this way, and it's really Really good. It's like the whole thing about this guy chasing you and all, and then he just turns around and goes, "Oh, boy, yeah, but this key came from Jesus, and it's the Jesus blood."
Yeah, like the turns are very dramatic, and they are jarring, but they're not jarring in an annoying way.
No.
Like they're jarring in a super fun way. And again, I think it all comes back to the tone that this movie sets.
Yeah.
And because of the way it's set up with the Crypt Keeper and stuff, you're willing to go on that journey because you're like, oh, it's a Crypt Keeper movie, so it's fine. But yeah, totally agree.
Number 2, the cast. I'm going to agree with you. I'll say the cast, and then I'll have like a 2A, which is, or 2.1, which is I'll put Billy Zane on his own, because the cast are great. Billy Zane is
he steals the show
a bit more. Yeah, he does. He steals the show. You're absolutely right. And number 3 is the practical effects. Now, taken away from those weird demon tail things that are going on, the actual practical effects, the Cordelia possession scene,
Danny's transformation,
Uncle Willie's transformation, everything like that. I think.
Oh yeah, I loved it all. And the thing is, that speaks to like the quality of this film. Is that I could have happily picked any of those as my love as well.
Yeah,
like so. Yeah, totally on board. In terms of hates, eye lasers look rather naff. The Jesus flashbacks look a bit pony. At that point, I think the ambitions do briefly run up against the budget, and it doesn't quite work. Like I said, I'm kind of going against what I said earlier. I am contradicting myself. I appreciate that, but for whatever reason, those sequences, the historic sequences, just didn't work. Now, I would have preferred it if they just stayed in the location, because I think that's where the movie's at its strongest. And number 3, Dickfire, for sure. I'm not a fan of Dickfire. That was this movie bizarre. Of all the crazy shit, that was this movie's jump in the shark moment.
Number 1, a lot of these hates are to do with the fact that they were meant to be done, but they're done so well, that's why you hate them. Like the gob in the face. I hated that because it was...
It's both totally gross and oddly brilliant. Like, it shouldn't be that memorable, but it is.
Number 2 is Roach. Like, Thomas Hayden Church does so well to be a scumbag, so good that I actually don't like him. Like,
this is weird because, you know, like earlier you said, oh, I'm starting to sound like you. This sounds like the kind of list I make about a film I actually like, where I'm like, I'm not actually naming things I hate. I'm just naming things about the film. I'm like, oh, Thomas Hayden Church is so good that I don't like him, which is also kind of awesome. But yeah, I was saying like, oh, this is what I must sound like to you.
Yeah. just doing lawyer speak at the moment. And number 3 is those monster things. Like, when you get them up close and personal, they just don't look right. They're
just a bit whatever the demons. Yeah. They just don't match up to the high bar that's established by the rest of the movie, certainly in terms of effects and in terms of just being interesting. They actually look okay, but they just didn't. Like I said, beyond being fodder for we're going to have the good guys shoot a couple of things.
Yeah,
I don't think they brought much to the table, sadly. Do you have any alternative titles? Surely there are some alternative titles for this film.
Yeah,
because just be clear, I actually think I have to keep looking up. This film is called Demon Knight. I think it's a terrible title. I don't think it makes sense. I think it doesn't capture the tone of this film. Obviously, it's called Tales of the Crypt. I don't have an issue with that. I just hate the Demon Knight part of it. I just don't think it works.
We need to preface this. I mean, whoever's listening to this podcast already know, but it's Knight with a K. The reason why I'm saying that is because wait for some of these titles, or at least one of these titles. So yeah, you had Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight. Oh, it was going to be called as well Demon Keeper.
That's better. Still not great, but better.
Argentina had 2, so they had one for the release and then one for the DVD.
Oh, like Live, Die, Repeat.
So you had Tales from the Crypt, The Night of the Devil.
That's okay.
Yeah, and then Tales from the Crypt, Diabolical Night, not with a K. So an actual night.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Brazil, The Demons of the Night.
Yeah, they've all missed the K, haven't they? They've totally all missed the K. Yeah.
It sounds like a song.
Yeah, it really does. It really does.
France, The Devil's Horseman.
No, don't like it.
Yeah, or their complete title, Tales from the Crypt, The Devil's Horseman. Germany, Knights of Demons with a K.
Oh no, that upsets me just hearing it.
Yeah.
That's grammatically insane. I don't care for it.
Well, Greece liked it because they took that and elongated it. Stories from the Crypt, The Night of Demons.
Oh, no. And they changed the tales. Yeah, to change the Tales of the Crypt bit as well. It's very upsetting.
Italy, The Night of Evil.
That's with an N, I assume.
Yeah, no, okay.
Oh, for fuck's sake! That's actually not too bad. That's not too bad.
Poland, Tales from the Crypt, Lord of the Demons.
Yeah, I think that's actually a bit better. That's more kind of on point, I think.
Portugal had two, randomly completely different. So when it was released on TV, the TV title was Chilling Tales, The Dark Knight, with a K.
That's okay, yeah.
Yeah. But I'm guessing the original release, The Devil's Envoy.
Yeah, a little bit too highbrow for the movie that we're talking about here, I think.
And that's it. That's the last one.
I love the fact that I'm just like, ooh, envoy's a fancy word. It's so full of shit. Do you have any facts for this one?
Yeah, we got a couple of facts. I mean, don't expect loads considering.
No, I wouldn't have thought so. Not a particularly famous film. I was actually surprised to hear that it did well at the box office. Not like crazy numbers, but it made some decent back.
Purposely released on Friday, January the 13th, because the Tales from the Crypt movies were originally to be tied with the traditional horror weekends, such as Friday the 13th for Halloween. Mm-hmm. Billy Zane's personal favourite film performance of his own. I
can totally get that. Yeah. He's ace in this film. Yeah. Ace.
The studio originally wanted Cameron Diaz for the role of Jerry Lynn, but director Ernest Dickerson convinced the producers to cast Jada Pinkett Smith instead. I think that was for this film, I think that was probably a good choice. I think Cameron Diaz might have been a bit much.
Yeah, but Cameron Diaz in 1995.
Oh, yeah. She was just coming off Mask on this, wasn't she? 94 was Mask, so...
Yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah. Right, absolute peak hotness. And yeah, I'm not saying Jada Pinkett Smith isn't the right choice, but there's also the argument of like, do I want 1995 Cameron Diaz in most things? Yeah, sure, why not?
Be a dick fire away and let's move on. Right. Billy Zane came up with the gag of his character opening his mouth to reveal a sponge.
Fantastic. Why is it so fucking gross, man?
Do you know what I gotta think as well? He probably did a Jerry Lynn. That end scene where she's got the blood in her mouth and she's not talking. He probably came on the set and they're going, "You ready, Billy?" And he's going, "You ready, Billy? Okay, action." Blah. Out comes.
It was just so good. It just seemed so natural, and of course it makes sense because it's a sponge. But you're just like, how the hell did so much sponge come out of his mouth? I don't know why. That scene left a mark on me, sadly.
I'm surprised we haven't heard people died from this film. The green slime was taken from glow sticks, which the FX crew disassembled.
Yeah, it's probably quite dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Winging it. Mid-90s horror, what do you expect?
Yeah. When the Crypt Keeper is walking around, a puppet head was superimposed over the body of a real actor who's wearing a green mask. We knew that anyway.
You can also see when the Crypt Keeper goes to the cinema at the end of the film and they have like a wide shot of him going into the cinema. Yeah. It's clearly just like either a kid or a midget. And it just looks a bit rubbish.
The name of the town Breaker ends up in is Wormwood. Star Wormwood is considered one of the signs of the biblical apocalypse.
Okay. Maybe this film is more highbrow than I thought. Who knows?
This isn't William Sadler's first time in a Tales from the Crypt tale. His first appearance was on the pilot episode as an executioner credited as Bill Sadler.
Yeah, again, you can totally get if you like William Sadler's playing an executioner. Like, yeah, I get it. Like, fair play, ballsy move, making him the hero.
Yeah. What else have we got here? I don't think there's... No, I'm good. I think
cool. Yeah. In terms of legacy, we've covered a lot of this. I mean, we mentioned it was supposed to be a trilogy, the whole thing with the end credits and they're like next year, Dead Easy's coming stuff. Instead, we got the poorly received Bordello of Blood, which didn't do so well despite the more humble budget. But is that a film you've actually seen as well, Bordello?
I've seen that, yeah.
Is it as bad as the reviews suggest? Or?
Yes, it's not good. I mean, it's... I want to say it's pre-Corey Feldman being weird, but I'm pretty sure Corey Feldman was always weird. So,
but he got away with it when he was younger, for sure. Yeah. Like he had a few years when he felt like a kind of movie star kid. It was basically as soon as he became an adult, it started getting weird pretty swift.
Yeah. So this was, I guess, this was like just coming out of his teens. But what it did have, which you were on about 1995 Cameron Diaz. Mm-hmm. It had 1996, and I always fuck this name up. Erika Eleniak, or Alienak.
Oh, dude from Baywatch.
And Under Siege.
Oh, yeah, she comes up the birthday cake, doesn't she? Yeah, I had a massive crush on her.
I love it. I love it how you went Baywatch, and I went, yeah, but in Under Siege, we see her tits.
yeah. I was weak, because I remember everyone was into Pamela Anderson from Baywatch, but she was the one for me for whatever reason. Yeah. I don't know. So but yeah, it felt like she was going to be like a star for a bit, but it never really happened, did it?
No, not at all.
He really should have changed the name. I think that would have been a good start.
Yeah, Erika Elinak or Alien.
I was never sure if I was saying the name right.
And it had Chris Sarandon in a vampire film. Chris Sarandon, who was his name Jerry in Fright Night? Which is a film. Was, yeah. Which is a film we have to do.
Yeah, we have to cover Fright. I've not seen Fright Night for ages. Did you watch the remake as well?
Do you know what? The remake
is not bad.
No, it's. I mean, I was always a big fan of Anton Yelchin. Anyway, I like some of the stuff.
Oh yeah, he's
Thomas was a fan of things like that. And to be fair, for a remake,
was he in Green Room as well?
He was.
Yeah, Green Room was fucking dope.
Oh
so
my God.
Dope. Anton Yelchin, he was just one of those like. I'm not going to go as far as say he was ever going to be a massive star. I think, but he would have made just a lot of these kind of weird films, and he was just always good and a natural fit for odd movies.
Yeah,
and it's just like, oh, it's such a shame that he passed away.
Well, Green Room actually gives us the Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight thing, doesn't it? Where they're in one room while people are trying to
the same thing. The Assault on Precinct 13 horror version. It's a much more modern film, but one I would happily go back to for this podcast. I genuinely love Green Room.
Green Room. Oh, I'd love to recover it. When I watched it was such a surprise. It was really good.
I remember looking forward to it for ages because I remember like hearing about the setup, hearing about the cast, and it seemed to take a long time to come out. And then, it didn't disappoint.
I mean, when you turn around and say Patrick Stewart plays a neo-Nazi.
Oh, yeah. Dude, I'm in. I'm fucking in. There is a long legacy, in terms of like Tales of the Crypt. I mentioned earlier, going right back to its EC comic roots back in the 50s.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure if the brand holds any sway or mainstream recognition in 2023. I mean, if you went outside and started asking people about, like, do they know who the Crypt Keeper is? I'm just not sure if people do nowadays, which is a bit of a shame. Which leads into the whole, like, if you were going to bring it back, they were talking about bringing it back with M. Night Shyamalan was due to produce a reboot a couple of years ago, but it never went anywhere due to rights issues. So it wasn't even the fact that they lost interest. It's just it's in development hell because of rights issues. I actually think the best place for it would be someone like Blumhouse, because you could have Blumhouse who have like this amazing track record with horror films. They could do their slightly higher brow horror films, but then they could have this kind of offshoot where use the Tales of the Crypt brand to do the really batshit bonkers crazy stories. But like I said, I know there is an argument that it doesn't need to be an anthology, but I'd still love to see an anthology version of this. There was also a 1972 movie, which I didn't know anything about.
No, I didn't. I mean, Tales from the Crypt has been going on for absolute years. I mean, it just keeps... But I'm with you in regards to does it have an audience this day and age? And I like your idea of the Blumhouse one. What they could do is what you kind of got early 2000s, where if it's a film you're not too sure is going to do anything, you say, oh, this is presented by Quentin Tarantino, or you do this film, or you do that film. I mean, they're pretty shit films. What you could do is if Blumhouse has got a story, but they don't think it's going to be big, you could actually put in that Tales from the Crypt arc, and then you could have a library of Tales from the Crypt stories. So
because I always think there's an issue where you get these, and it's the reason maybe a lot of the Stephen King stuff doesn't work brilliantly on screen is that they take a short story and they stretch it out. And of course, as soon as you make a short story 90 minutes long, you need an element of resolution.
Yes.
Whereas if you keep it to 30 minutes, you can just stop anyway. You don't need any resolution. You can just, like, I always think back to stuff like, VHS or the fantastic anthology movie is Trick or Treat or Trick or Treat.
Trick or Treat.
Released,
because Trick or Treat tells you that I watched that with my wife back last Halloween.
So good. Why haven't more people seen that film? It's so
I went to the cinema to watch it because it was re-released in Halloween. And I love that because not only is it an anthology story, it's not as well. It's all these stories are intertwined. What's happening to one is happening the exact same time as this next story, but that's happening before the last story.
Yeah, it's kind of like Nolan light in terms of its structure. But you think one of the reasons I think more people didn't see that is because, like, Trick or Treat, it doesn't have a name associated with it. Whereas I know it doesn't have name recognition now, but still, if that was, say, called Tales of the Crypt Trick or Treat, I think maybe it would have got a slightly larger audience. So yeah, I would love to see something like Tales of the Crypt and then have like a Trick or Treat setup. That level as well, where you can go pretty big in terms of the stories, but you retain a level of quality. Like, I don't want to see the shit version of this. And I know they mentioned Shyamalan. I love Shyamalan. I think he's actually fantastic. I know his output's hit and miss.
No, I'm not a fan of him, to be fair.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan. Like, I think him at his best. I think he's a genuinely good director who basically got too much power too early. But that's another conversation. But my issue with Shyamalan is the tone doesn't feel right. Like, M. Night Shyamalan should be doing The Twilight Zone. The Twilight Zone makes perfect sense for Shyamalan. Yeah. He shouldn't be doing this. I don't know, if he was still around, I'd be like, get Wes Craven to present it or something like that. But yeah, I think Trick or Treat is like the sweet spot of how I envision the future of Tales of the Crypt. And that's what, basically, I just want to see more Trick or Treat. And if that means kind of, like, I already love that. But if you add like the Crypt Keeper to the front and add some of that meta stuff, oh, dude, fucking, that is a Liam movie if ever there was one.
Absolutely. Do you know what felt like the updated version of Tales from the Crypt? Do you remember? I say updated, it was 10 years after Demon Knight. Masters of Horror, where they took actual horror directors and they each got to direct an episode. So Wes Craven did one, Tobe Hooper did one. All these horror directors did their own. And I think that's what you need now. But you don't have this day and age, aside from Blumhouse as the production company, you don't have what you had back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, horror directors. This guy...
I mean... Yeah, I know what you mean. I was trying to think of like who I'd want directing these films. And bizarrely, the first one that pops into my head isn't American. I would get like Takeshi Miike would be from Japan, would be a perfect example. Like he knows how to swing for the fences when it comes to horror. And I'd love to see like someone give Takeshi Miike, say 30 minutes, do what you want, go crazy. Here's a bit of a budget. And that's part one of a 3-part story. That, there is actually, and I can't remember the name of it, but there's a brilliant Asian horror anthology. And it's, I think one of the stories was turned into a full-length one about eating dumplings, which are made of people or something. But that was like, and it was like, I think it was one directed from Japan, one from Korea, and one from China, or some nonsense like that. Basically, I just want to see more top-tier horror anthology. But like you said, it's like you've got to find the right directors for it.
Yeah.
In terms of making a change, so this is the section, I do apologize, where we pick one thing we could change about this movie to make it better. I wouldn't actually change much about this film, and it's a little bit of a kind of cop-out, but I would change the generic demons. The dick fire, but it would either be the generic demons or the whole laser eye thing. And I think they all come under the same, the lasers are coming out of those demons. I would do something a bit more interesting there.
Do you know what? I'm with not on the change in regards to there's not much I'd want to change. And I've already mentioned what I would have changed. I would have personally kissed Billy Zane with the blood in my mouth.
Yeah, that's a good job. And
had him like just start to melt from the inside and then explode. I mean, he died.
I was annoyed that they didn't, because they really heavily handed it. Like she's got that blood in her mouth for so long, and she doesn't do a very good job of hiding it in the same way that Billy Zane hides the sponge. Like, but he's a pro. What can you do? And I was just like, when she just spat in his face, I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, that's the payoff for all that? Yeah, bit of a shame. So I think you're actually right, but I'm still a little disappointed by the demons all the same. In terms of video games, there was no video game, unsurprisingly. But I do like the idea of an anthology-style video game with different protagonists and timelines, each presented by the Crypt Keeper, I suppose. And immediately I thought of Eternal Darkness by Silicon Knights. I'm not sure if you remember that. It was one of the earliest games for the GameCube, and it had like a bunch of like insanity effects. Okay. Like it would look like the game was turning up the volume on your TV, and sometimes it would just switch off, and you're like, wait, is my console fucking up? But it was all part of the game, and you had different protagonists in different eras of history. And I just like the idea that you have slightly interconnected stories, but different protagonists, different storylines, all connected by the Crypt Keeper. And I know they're not around anymore, Silicon Knights, but if they would bring the band back together, the Eternal Darkness team, and get them to do that, that's what I'd go for.
I like how we've gone different, because you've concentrated on the actual, basically for this film, you've concentrated on the first 3.5 minutes and the last 2 minutes. Which is you've concentrated on the Tales from the Crypt side of it.
Yeah.
Whereas when I've looked at it, I've looked at the actual film Demon Knight. What I would, and for me, if I was making a film of Demon Knight, it'd be Resident Evil-esque. You're stuck in a building, there's monsters coming after you, and you've got demons. So I would have like a Resident Evil style game, maybe not by Capcom, but off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone else that would have done that style of game at the moment. But you see where I'm going with that. That I would. Oh no,
100%. Maybe you get like the and I forget the team at EA who did it, but like Dead Space, something along those lines.
Yes,
I actually quite like the idea. If you did it, say it was Capcom, and they're in the house, but it's like a roguelite where you can pick whichever character you want to control at any given moment, and they have different skill sets. But once they're dead, they are dead. The whole you don't respawn or anything. You just move to another character then, and then pick up their story. So you essentially have playthroughs. Kind of like Grand Theft Auto 5, when you're not playing as one of the characters, the other character is just doing his own thing.
Yeah.
That kind of style, but with genuine permadeath, I think would be pretty cool.
Can I change? You've hit the nail on the head. I want to change my answer. I want to do Supermassive Games, and I want them to do that story-esque thing like they did for Until Dawn, where you're in the house and you choose the character, and then you're doing the quick time event. The character dies, you move on to the other character. You have different endings for maybe.
So something more cinematic, basically.
Yes. So I think it's a Supermassive Game style.
I think you win. I think that's actually the right answer. Son of a bitch. So on to scores and recommendations. I'll go first. Pretty easy for me. It's a 4-star film, and yes, I will and have recommended this film. Already a bit disappointed that. And see, again, like any of these films, you can't just go recommend to anyone. It's not everyone's cup of tea. But I know a lot of people who I'll be saying, like, dude, you should watch this fucking film because it's dope.
I love this. I love it when we either, because we're hit or miss, me and you. We either fully agree or we
completely disagree.
Completely.
There's rarely a middle ground.
Yeah. So it's a 4-star film for me. It was always going to be a 4-star film when I started rewatching it. I think it's great. Now, here's the kicker, right? In regards to recommendations, because I've known this film for years, but not many people have. It's no, as you said, you've recommended it already, but you've recommended it to people you know who would watch this.
Oh yeah, you've got to know your audience.
But I don't have anyone in my life that I think would go to watch this who hasn't already seen it.
Oh yeah, I see. Well, the thing is, a perfect example is like last weekend, my wife's mum and brother came up. I would not recommend this film to them. However, this evening, 2 of my friends from Cardiff and Manchester are coming up to stay. I will be recommending this wholeheartedly to one of them and to the other one with a slight caveat. So again, it completely depends on the person. But I know there's like certain people I'm like, you have to watch this film. There'll be some people who are like, you might like this film. And then some people I wouldn't even bring it up in conversation.
You know what? What you need to do, if you still had it for rent, because you get it for 48 hours, don't you, after you watch it? When you pick them up tonight, you sit them down, you go, right, put in Curly, sit down. Just make them watch it again, dude. Just watch it again. Well,
I've got like a back, because I remember, this isn't as extreme, but I got put in to watch Itchy the Killer, to bring it back to Takeshi Mike, and I still don't think he's completely forgiven me for that. And the same, like the other end of the spectrum, I told some of my friends that Dogtooth was a really good film.
Oh my God.
Oh, it's like a really dark comedy. I mean, it is the blackest comedy of all time. They didn't see it as a comedy. They found it very disturbing and are still a little upset with me. So yes, I have failed with my recommendations in the past in terms of going after the wrong people, but I feel pretty safe with this. There are certain people who would really enjoy this film.
Yeah,
but
it's
like my brother, I think, would love this. And as I said, I know, like, I'm not giving it a 5-star. That would be ridiculous. But I thoroughly enjoyed this film. Like, as much as I would say maybe anything I've watched this year. And I don't think that works for anyone. It's not like, you know, some films you watch, you're like, oh, dude, everyone would love this film. Not everyone's going to love this film. You've got to be on board with the tone. And it's the same, you know, litmus test with me. If you don't love this film in the first 3-4 minutes, you're probably not going to love it. But I was on board straight away. And as I said, this has been one of my favorite viewing experiences of the year for sure.
Awesome.
Is that it? So just what we're doing next week? My choice?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot who chose Demon Knight then. I realised, no, that was definitely my choice.
That was definitely
come on, mate.
I literally just spent 20 minutes talking about how I'd never seen it before. So long overdue look back at 1999's The Matrix, which I assume means the return of Dave, because he did insist that we invite
Dave,
him for The Matrix.
I mean, say insist like he held a gun to us. I'm watching The Matrix. No, he did ask if when we covered The Matrix he could do it. He said randomly that he's been watching all 3 or 4 of them, but different parts. Like, he just watches 10 minutes of this and 10 minutes of that. So
it's not a bad way to go with the sequels, actually, because the sequels are very hit and miss. And I know a lot of people don't like them. I actually think they hold up incredibly well. And certainly in regards to modern cinema, they seem a lot more interesting now than they maybe did 20 years ago, when cinema, I think, was in a decidedly better place. But if you handpick moments from those films, some of it is just unbelievable. It's amazing how good large swathes of 2 and 3 even still look to this day. And I even looked at the Animatrix, and we'll talk about this next week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think The Matrix, and I know you have a slightly different take on this, I think it is one of, like, if you remove all the sci-fi trappings and all the other nonsense, I think it's legitimately one of the greatest action movies of all time. But we'll get to that next week.
No, can I just say, I am looking forward to rewatching this, because I've seen it once, maybe twice. Early 99, early 2000s, or 99. So I've seen it, I think, twice. And I remember not being a massive fan, but I'm really looking forward to watching it, because as my tastes have changed now after 20 odd years, things like that. Going back to this now to see, because The Matrix is a massive thing. It grew legs, and
that was a big issue.
Yeah, but I'm really looking forward to going back to see if the effects hold up, the story. I'm a huge Keanu Reeves fan. I'm a huge Morgan Freeman fan. So I really can't wait to rewatch it. Whether or not it becomes Star Wars, Stargate, or for me, or it becomes something like...
I feel much more confident in this, because I can totally see where you're coming from, because I put The Matrix in the same kind of category, and this is going to sound weird, as say something like Borat, where it was so a victim of its own success. And even, what was it called? Austin Powers had the same issue, that it became so popular and so prevalent in society that it'd been parodied so many times that it was hard to remove the parody from the reality of the original product.
Yeah.
But I think time away from it has actually made it even better. And I think you will be pleasantly surprised by how brilliantly the action sequences in particular hold up. Like, again, we've talked about it loads of times with these movies in the past, using CG to the limits of what was available at the time. They never go overboard. Some of it is cutting edge, but they lean back on practical effects wherever possible. And the last time I watched this was a couple of years ago, and I think I may have enjoyed it more than I ever have in the past. And I certainly appreciated it more, but we will talk about that next week. So I'm looking forward to getting your opinion on this.
If nothing else, I've got a great idea for a poster for this one, so I'm looking forward to doing that.
I am looking forward to that. So anything else before we wrap up, dude?
Actually, no. By the time this gets released for us now, we'll be out of the podcast awards, so I'm not going to do people's...
I'm sure we've won. Sure we've won.
Oh, absolutely. I mean...
Every confidence, dude.
Yeah. But no, actually, mate, I'm good. I had a good time rewatching this. I had a good time recording this with you today, so...
All right, then. I've been Liam. This has been Rob. You've been listening to You Guys podcast, and we will see you next week for The Matrix. Cheers, guys. Oh, and before I forget, where can folk reach us if they were so inclined to?
Well, you can actually reach us on Hey You Guys 80s at Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. But if you want to send us a mail, do heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Send us in your recommendations. Send us in your thoughts about any of the episodes. Just literally talk to us. We'll have a one-sided talk with you on the podcast.
Yeah. We're nice folk. Get in touch. But no, cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.
Hey, you guys!